still pumped after that, even after week 2.
Oh.
Welcome to the Shaw Media podcast, North and West Edition. I'm Daily Chronicle sports editor Eddie Carifio. I'm alongside Shaw Media regional sports editor JT Pedelty. JT, what is up?
Took the dog out this morning and to do her business, and man, it feels like football out there. Nice crispness in the air. Grass is just losing that sharp green to it. I'm really excited for week 2 here after what was an outstanding week 1 of football, Eddie.
Yeah, it's like chilly, you could even say, if you wanted to today. Perfect football weather, like you said. So we should probably jump into it, I think. That's enough small talk, I think. We're good, right?
We're good.
Because we got a rivalry game this week. We had a rivalry game last week, Sycamore DeKalb. That one went as advertised up this way. We go down your way for another rivalry game, Streeter and Ottawa. What should we know about that one, JT?
Yeah, 104th meeting between these two, third oldest rivalry in the state. For years, they thought it was 1895 was the first one. And then looking through newspapers.com, I found an 1894 one where the society editor of the Streeter newspaper was disappointed that none of the boys got killed during the game. It was a different time back then.
I would like to read that article.
I will text it to you here when we get done recording. But yeah, as Brian Hoxie and I were putting together our season previews this year for the Illinois Valley special preview section, we kind of both realized the way the schedules fell, there's a great chance for either Streeter or Ottawa to start the season 3-0, which, Ottawa 1-8 last season, Streeter 3-6. It'd be huge for either one of those programs if they could do it. Now, to do it, LP would have to find a way to beat LP, which they haven't done in about a decade. I'm sorry, Ottawa would have to find a way to beat LP, which they haven't done in about a decade. Or Streeter would have to find a way to beat Ottawa, which they haven't done since that fall season of 2021. But we're here. Both teams won last week pretty impressively. Ottawa, handled Plano 35-6. Streeter took care of Decatur Eisenhower 36-14. So really excited, always a great environment at King Field in Ottawa or at Doug Deacon Stadium in Streeter for this one when these old rivals meet. It's not a conference game anymore, but it means a lot to both communities. So, and not to mention starting 2-0 means a lot to any football team in Illinois.
Yeah, as they say, and as like I said, DeKalb has now proved 2 weeks in a row or 2 years in a row against Sycamore with these near upsets in both of them. You could toss out the records when these teams play. It would be a really dumb game, with our new eliminator challenge we're doing. This seems like it would be a pretty dumb game to pick. Like, who would pick a rivalry game? Spoiler alert, and this is the one I'm going to be picking.
And you can probably guess who would pick that as their eliminator game because I live in La Salle County, so there ain't no way I'm touching this one with a 10-foot pole as an eliminator game with confidence. And partly because, they say throw out the records, and that's one of the stupid things you can say. But when these two meet, they tend to be good games. There have been lots of upsets over the years. Teams tend to win it in streaks, especially Ottawa. Streeter in the very early days of the rivalry, Ottawa in the 50s, 60s, and they're on a little run now. But yeah, I'm very excited. I think it'll be a really good football game. Past few years, Streeter, if I'm being honest about it, which is what we're here for, I think they've kind of got some week 2 culture shock after playing some lesser opponents in week 1. They had East Peoria, I believe, for a lot of years. Decatur Eisenhower here the past couple of years, and nothing against those programs. But just saying that Ottawa, the football that we play up here, it's Ottawa, that type of football is a lot different, a lot more physical. And I think Streeter kind of hasn't adjusted well to that week 2 change facing Ottawa, even when maybe I think a handful of times over the past few years, a lot of people thought maybe Streeter might even have had the more talented team than Ottawa, but Ottawa kind of took it to them. So very interested to see how this one goes. I think it'll be a really good game, and no way in heck I would ever pick it as my eliminator.
We'll get to that in a minute. We're going to bring on Rob here in a minute, but before we do, want to hit this Rockridge Princeton game again down your way. Seems pretty interesting. You would think it would be a meeting of maybe a 1-0 teams, but Princeton had themselves a tough week 1 opponent in a tough week 1 game.
Yeah, Princeton coming off a 28-14 loss to Sterling Newman Central Catholic, the school of many names. But no shame in losing to Newman. Obviously, a great program. A little bit surprising. Maybe you're just so used to seeing Princeton with a 0 in that right side of the column for a lot of times the entire regular season, but certainly at this point of the season. I don't think they'd lost a season opener for 8 years. So, Princeton, this is a bounce back game for them. Although Rock Ridge, coming off a 45-0 dismantling of Sherrard. They got a good quarterback, Colin Schweigen. He threw 4 touchdowns last week, but coming off a loss, Princeton still had 200-yard rushers last week. They outgained Newman in yards from scrimmage. I like Princeton's chances in this one.
Yeah, it does seem like they'd be the favorite, especially I got to think after that week 1 loss, like you said, there against the tough team. Obviously, that was a fun voice crack against the tough team, obviously. But this does have I think bounce back written all over it. Not to undersell this Rockridge team that definitely also had like you said a very solid week 1.
Yeah, absolutely. While we're down here, there's one more down here that I'd point out that kind of goes in with those Princetons and Ottawas and Streeters as those old NCIC schools and kind of the teams down here. Illinois Valley, La Salle Peru lost to United Township for the first time since 2019, or actually their first week 1 loss since 2019. They lost to United Township, who they've handled the last handful of seasons in the opener. 23-21 last week. Great game. Marion Persich, LP's quarterback, ran for over 100 yards, threw for over 200 yards. He did his thing. Another D1 recruit, I think NIU recruit, Jadwan Cranford. You might know how to pronounce that better than I do, Eddie.
That name hasn't popped up for me yet.
In a couple of years, you'll learn it.
Yes.
From Metamora, he had a 60.
Well, unless Iowa State ends up stealing him before he I don't know how many NIU people listen to the podcast, but that's going to go over huge. I'm just telling you.
Well, in any college nowadays, you never know year to year.
Iowa State's been plucking a lot of NIU recruits. They took like 3 of them last year, I think, after a player had committed to NIU. Like not even through the portal. Like after these are seniors, Iowa State that had committed to NIU for college. Iowa State flipped them.
Well, let's hope Mr. Cranford's not listening to us down in Metamora and calling into Iowa State. But yeah, Metamora 43-14 win last week. Big plays. That's what LP is going to have to stop. This Metamora program feels like after a couple of years that have been down for them, like they might be back to playing Metamora Redbirds football.
Yeah, and plus doing that against Sterling, that's kind of an eye-opener. Sterling obviously has been very, very up these last few years. I wasn't expecting a setback from them this year, so that probably indicates that this Metamora team is really, really good. La Salle's going to obviously have to click on all cylinders to, make this one interesting.
Yeah, and you cover teams in the Interstate 8 Conference. I cover teams in the Interstate 8 Conference. You can't afford a whole bunch of non-conference losses because, you've got Sycamore, you've got Morris, you've got Rochelle, you've got Canelan. They're all lurking there for you. So, LP's playing their arch rival twice this year. So I never like that, no matter which team you think is better on a second meeting. Oh boy, so I'm very interested to see kind of how LP handles Metamora here, if they can keep up with them, because you sure don't want to start 0-2.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like you said, you covered it all. It's going to be really tough for them to circle back from a 0-2 hole. So I think we could bring on our boy, correct?
Rob Osterly. Let's bring him on.
Hey, guys.
Good morning, Rob. How's it going, man?
Not too bad. Always good to be talking football.
Let's start with one that's got my attention because it's actually Mehmet Seymour going on their I-8 tour this year. They got Sycamore in week 3, but first they're hosting Morris.
Yeah, don't know too much about Muhammad. The last time I saw them was a few years back. They came up to Morris in the playoffs and were pretty highly touted. They had a quarterback that was supposed to be going like small D1 type of kid, and I believe Morris laid a 50 burger on him and sent him back home.
Yeah, they'll do that.
Tends to happen when Morris plays like the teams south of here. Seems like the physicality of the play up here is a little more than those Southern teams are used to seeing. I know Morris probably doesn't have a real good taste in their mouth after having to come back in the last minute and beat Wilmington. I think they'd kind of like to show people that, they are, as good as people think they're going to be.
What's your impression of them after that first week? Because you look at that score and it's maybe not exactly what you would have thought, even though it does end up obviously being a win.
Yeah, it certainly was surprising. I thought maybe the first half could be, competitive, but I just figured Morris's sheer numbers and size would end up wearing down Wilmington. But Jeff Reentz is a Hall of Fame coach for a reason, and he knows what he's doing. He's going to have his kids prepared, and he certainly did. And I'm sure there was a mention or two during the lead up to the game that Jeff graduated from Morris, and he would really like to beat them.
Yeah, and what you talked about Morris kind of wearing them down. So, that's kind of been the blueprint the last couple of years when Coal City's opened against Morris has been, Coal City hangs tough with them for a while. Morris wears them down. And then you look at the final score and you end up being, thinking, hey, it wasn't that competitive of a game. And, you see that a lot when you have larger schools play smaller schools. Wilmington avoided that. And we'll talk about their week 2 matchup here in a second, Rob. A surprising matchup of two teams who was surprisingly 0-1. But one other thing with, that I was going to talk about, Mahomet Seymour, they're in the playoffs every year, 5A. I think 19 of the past 22 seasons that there were a playoff. Oh, that COVID year. I just hate having to write that and say that all the time.
Yeah.
You can just say
19 the last time there was a playoff.
You can just say 19 in the last 22 postseasons.
Yeah. But that's a tip. Yeah, that's a tip right there. We're here to teach. Maybe even to learn. But, I really think, Mahomet Seymour starts out 0-1 here. They lost just a thrilling game to Morton. I think Mahomet Seymour scored in the closing seconds, much like Morris did. And they went for 2. Morris, I believe, went for 2 and got it, but it didn't really matter on the final result. Mahomet Seymour went for 2 and didn't get it and lost 28-27 to the Potters down there. So another team with probably a chip on their shoulder coming into this one, a strong program, but they graduated quite a bit. So I'm with you, Rob. I think Morris is the pick here.
Yeah, I'm on board with that one too.
Yeah, when you consider that, they always say that the teams make the biggest jump between week 1 and week 2. So if Morris got away with a win that maybe probably wasn't their prettiest. I heard there was several unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, which is kind of to be expected when you've got like a neighborhood rivalry, and all the trash talk that was going back and forth between the kids before the game. Yeah, you're going to have some of that. I don't think they would, there's not that neighborhood pride to play for in Mahomet because it's, unless you're, Route 47 bragging rights, but that's quite a ways to go for those. But yeah, I just got a feeling that Morris, really gets back to business, down to business, not back to business, but they get down to business and make their improvements and come away with I would say, a pretty handy victory. The biggest thing is maybe a trap game. You had an emotional game in week 1 against a neighborhood type rival. And then next week you've got Peoria, which I know they are sick and tired of losing to. So they got to kind of watch out for looking past Mahomet here in this, in between those 2 games.
And I think we can slide right over to who Morris played. Sorry, Eddie, in week 1, Wilmington. Sandwich comes in 0-1. Wilmington, as we mentioned, comes in 0-1. Wilmington, that heartbreaking loss to Morris 27-20. Sandwich, really just couldn't stop Mantino at all, allowed over 50 points. And man, if you have a tough time stopping, the Mantino running game, I think Sandwich might have a tough time stopping that Wilmington running game.
Yeah, I think, and speaking of the eliminator earlier, this is my eliminator pick. I wouldn't want to be in the path of Wilmington after that loss. They're going to have some frustrations to take out, and Sandwich may be lucky to see the ball because Wilmington will just grind it and grind it and grind it, and I think they end up wearing down the Indians before it's over as well.
It'll be interesting to see what Sandwich can do, but I think you're like 100% right on that one. Sandwich has been such a feel-good story the last couple of years, but it might be a little bit of a rough start for them this year.
Yeah.
Speaking of feel-good story, because you didn't field the varsity team for a year or two, and then you come back and have a successful season. Dwight, kind of in our neck of the woods, Rob, is one of those teams that's playing a team that started off 1-0 after not fielding a varsity team for a couple of years. Rock Island Alleman. Dwight got a forfeit week 1. They come in 1-0. Rock Island Alleman came in, just crushed Walter Christian 63-12. Walter Christian, one of those teams that was in the Chicagoland Prairie and no longer is with Dwight. But Dwight's by coming off that Lyle, because Lyle isn't fielding a varsity team this year. But Dwight's an interesting team, Rob, because they made the Class 2A quarterfinals last year. They were kind of a Cinderella story themselves. They make the quarterfinals. They bring back a ton from that team. And what they don't bring back is a little dash GSW at the end of their school name, because they're no longer co-oping with Gardner South Wilmington, which by all projections is probably going to drop them down to Class 1A this year. If Dwight plays to expectations, and we'll find out, this Friday night at Augustana College if the team is what we think it can be. But that could be a beast in 1A.
Yeah, I mean, they could be I don't think they're quite up to Lee Wynn's status, but I mean they may not see them until quite late in the playoffs if they do make the playoffs. So, but yeah, losing that dash GSW I think helps Dwight, because from all I've heard is they really weren't getting the numbers from GSW that they had in the past. I think there was only a couple of kids from Gardner that, like, the last couple of years that had come over to Dwight. So they just decided, it really hasn't been worth it. So they're just not, eliminating it. And yeah, now that enrollment drops and, they're another factor in 1A.
Yep. And everyone else has said they're eliminators. So
I never actually picked. So
I guess you didn't technically, but now would be a great time to hit that and then let Rob go and maybe take a break and come back and talk about the other games we got. Rob, you mentioned yours. You got Wilmington. What are you thinking on that one?
Do I have to throw out a score?
No.
Just in general, what you're thinking.
Because I'm thinking.
Although you covered it pretty good already.
Yeah, I'm thinking. Yeah, it's kind of a pick your score for Wilmington. After, Sandwich gave up 50 to Mantino. I know Mantino's supposed to be pretty good this year, but I don't know if they've ever been on Wilmington's level.
Well, if I'm picking a score, I would like to see them score 5. Really prove that talent.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be one of your typical Wilmington games that, you look at the score early and you might, oh, wow, they're hanging in there. But, Wilmington's that team that tends to wear on you too. And in the third and fourth quarters, those 4 and 5 yard games from the first quarter are all of a sudden, 50 and 60 yard touchdowns. What was it? Is it Ketman is the running back from Wilmington? He, what do you have, like 160 yards against Morris? Granted, 80 of it was on a touchdown, but he's got that type of ability, and I think.
Yeah, but still ripping off an 80-yard touchdown against Morris is impressive in and of itself, let alone with the other 80 yards he got.
Right. So I mean, although on the other hand, if you're going to beat Morris, you're going to run it right at him like Wilmington does, and they're very good at it. It's all they do, and it's like Denzel Washington in. Remember the Titans, it's like Novocaine. It takes a while, but it's going to work.
So Eddie, you want to take a break here and come back and do our survivor picks?
Rob, thanks for dropping in.
My pleasure.
Appreciate that very much. So we're going to pause for a quick break here, and then we'll get back to JT and mine picks when we get back.
SGKR Injury Attorneys tackles the toughest cases. I'm Matt Rundio. When life throws a flag, we go on offense to protect your rights. Don't get sidelined. Score a touchdown with SGKR. Visit us at sgkr.law.
I'm State Representative Steve Reich. Since 2017, I've led the fight to reform our child welfare system and supported educational choice for every kid in Illinois. I've worked to stop the collapse of our public pensions while standing up for businesses that are being crushed by crippling mandates. And I've never forgotten who pays the bill. The work isn't finished, and as I run for re-election, I'm asking for your support. I'm Steve Reich, and I approve this message.
At Oliver's, we are proud to serve our community. We serve up great customer service, quality products, ease of shopping, and we serve up delicious barbecued sandwiches at our fundraiser cookouts. So stop by Oliver's, 748 North Brinton and Dixon, and help fund our local clubs and events.
Okay, so pick time. We got Rob just picked Wilmington for his Eliminator Challenge. We all, by the way, got our Eliminators right. Rob's picking on behalf of the guest each week, which was Sam last week. Picked Dupec, and they did go ahead and win quite handily. I already teased mine, so I'll finish mine up here. I did obviously tease I was picking Ottawa Streeter. I just couldn't find a good game to pick. There were a couple. I like this one. I like coming down your neck of the woods. I like poaching this one. I'm going to go Ottawa in this one. I mean, I think it's a good use of choosing Ottawa to get a win because, we can only pick a team once. So I'm picking Ottawa in this one. I hope it pays off. I just kind of like the way they played in this game lately. I think it's a good chance for them.
Yeah, I think Ottawa is definitely the favorite, for our Friday Night Drive picks. We don't always pick them. Sometimes it's a game another market has, and then we discuss and debate between ourselves. Sometimes Seuss just picks them because, who's not going to listen to Seuss about high school football? But sometimes when it's an in-market game, we pick them ourselves. I picked this one, and, as a Streeter High School graduate, I will, stand up and say, I picked Ottawa in this one. And, if Streeter, I know they think that they're much improved, new head coach, Jay Sloan. I know they think they're kind of you have to prove it. And you haven't beat Ottawa for a few years. You really haven't competed very well with Ottawa for a few years. So that's something you got to prove. So I think Ottawa is a very reasonable pick to make. I don't think I'd go strong. I had a different one that I was thinking was a little strong, a little more of a sure thing. Also in the city of Ottawa, you're going to have two 1-0 teams playing, where the rivers come together in Ottawa and just a little bit up the Fox River. You're going to have Ottawa Marquette hosting Madison. That's Madison, Illinois, not Wisconsin. But both teams 0-1. But, Marquette's 21-point loss to Aurora Christian, which is a constant 1A playoff team and probably a 2A playoff team this year if you listen to Seuss, which you should, as I just said. But I like Marquette's 21-point loss to Aurora Christian a lot better than I like Madison's 16-point loss to Sparta Steelville in week 1. Sparta Steelville hadn't won a varsity football game in 6 years. So, I think Marquette's a strong pick here. New head coach Ken Carlson. They look pretty good against Aurora Christian. Had a rough second half, but I think they get on the right side of things here. I'm picking Marquette all the way for my eliminator pick this week. Like you said, Eddie, you got last week correct. Canelan over Rock Island handily, and I had Tri-Valley over Fieldcrest, which we got handily. So hopefully we can keep it rolling.
Yeah, I think all three last week were running clocks. We should do bonus points if your game doesn't go the running clock and it's still a win. I don't know. I'm just spitballing now as we go. Trying to make my Ottawa Streeter pick look.
I feel strongly yours will not be running clock, but we'll see.
No, that's what I mean. I get bonus points for that.
Yeah,
for picking a closer game, or whoever picks the closest game gets bonus points or something. Doesn't matter. We got more games to discuss than rather trying to jerry rig my score in this competition.
You know what? We were talking some Nib 12. Here I go. We were talking some Interstate 8. Sycamore has a pretty interesting game, I think, here against a 7A school, Eddie.
Yeah, second week in a row. DeKalb, obviously, 7A. Sycamore, I said, came away with that one, 22-21. Second straight year they were losing in the fourth quarter to DeKalb. Second straight year they end up pulling it out. Your very typical end to that game where they got the ball with 8 minutes and 13 seconds left and just ran out the clock, as you're prone to do with 8.5 minutes left on the clock. Other than that, though, it wasn't like much of a typical Sycamore game. They turned it over twice, which they don't do very often. One of those directly led to a touchdown, a Devon Grant fumble return, 45 yards or so. There was a special teams miscue, a bad snap in the end zone that the punter did a good job just getting out of the end zone, but only got to about the 1 or 2 with it. DeKalb immediately turned that into a touchdown. So just a very un-Sycamore-like game in week 1. A lot of new faces, part of that. Rob mentioned the biggest jump coming between week 1 and week 2. That's one of Joe Ryan's favorite or most, I guess, held beliefs is that happened. So he's expecting a lot from this team, and they've got the long ride out to Moline against the Moline team that's, become a playoff regular over the last decade or so. Actually, they played DeKalb in the postseason a couple of years ago. I think they even met in the regular season. They did a home and home, the two teams. So this one seems interesting. I like Sycamore. I think they showed enough. I don't think they're going to be, down, even though there's a lot of new faces on that team. They're running the ball really well. They had 3 guys top over 80. They had Kevin Lee hit 100. Even Ralph, Dylan Curtis were in the mix. And Cooper Bodie also plays linebacker, is sitting there if they need him too, as a big, more bruising back. So I like the Sycamore team after week 1, even though that game didn't go. And I think this Moline game, I wish we'd been able to get out there, but it's going to be a really, really good one.
Yeah. I think that's, you love teams that challenge themselves in the early weeks of the season, be it with, playing with longer trips, with playing up a class or 2, with seeing what you got. It's kind of a wild card this year, and I don't know the exact enrollments of Sycamore. I know Sycamore better than I would know Moline, but, are these teams going to fall in like 7A, 6A, 5A? There's such a wild card this year with the non-boundary multiplier being applied to so many more schools than it has traditionally. That some of these we talk traditional 7A and they might fall 6A or you just don't know. And a lot of the private schools, non-boundary schools that we're used to talking about, being a 1A power like Aurora Christian, they seem like a shoo-in to play 2A this year. And I think a lot of I was going to say a lot of high school football fans may not understand that, the way the classes are set up, you really don't know what class you're in until you know which teams make the playoff field, the 256. So until that moment, no one is for sure in any class, unless you're the smallest school in the state or the largest school in the state, or I guess smallest 32 and largest 32. Yeah. Other than that, it all depends how it breaks out, where they go. And now with that multiplier added in for so many more schools, it's a wild thing, but regardless, either way, they are playing up, and I love to see teams challenge themselves like that.
Yeah, no, there's still a decided what's it called, a population gap between the two. Because I did look it up. Sycamore, I remember the exact number. Sycamore's at about 1,200, and Moline's at about 22. I'm trying to remember because I also read when Seuss had the his projections and everything. I remember. I still think Sycamore is pretty solidly going to be in the 5A group, and I believe Moline is. Because I remember DeKalb being solidly in 7A if they were to make it, and Moline's about 200 bigger than they are. So I think these are still, if I'm remembering everything correctly, which we know I don't make mistakes. So I'm pretty sure Moline's 7A and Sycamore is still 5A. So
pretty right. Another game that you had on your list, and I think everyone in the state has on their list for those middle school sized football. Byron Dixon. I was listening to Seuss and Matt Rodewald, the Mothership podcast for Friday Night Drive yesterday while I was mowing the grass, and they were incredulous that why are you playing this game in week 2? And I honestly don't know how you justify, if you're a conference putting together a schedule, why you would schedule this one week 2. It's exciting week 2, but man, it'd be fun to build up to this and see it. But Byron Dixon, this is a big time matchup, Eddie.
Yeah, no, I don't know why they would put it in week 2. I mean, obviously it's a league game. You have a lot of control over that. And I know with the BNC, with the 9 teams, it gets a little weird with scheduling, but you still have 4 games in week 9. You could just swap them out. Seems like it would work. No, but this is, last year was really close with Byron. Obviously, Byron, I don't know who would type Dixon in a hurry at 6 a.m. this morning in their notes that are hastily thrown together for this podcast.
Certainly
Byron 129. Byron 129-28 last year, kind of what we call foreshadowing of how their playoff game went against future 3A state champ Montini. Very similar games, obviously coming down to a 2-point conversion at the end. Worked out in Byron's favor to beat Dixon. That did not work out against Montini. So
in the second round, by the way.
Oh yeah, what round did I say?
Oh no, you didn't. I'm just
okay.
I don't think you did. I'm saying in the second. second week of the season, second round of the playoffs. We're spoiling our great matchups here way too early.
Yeah, well, obviously, Montini being in 3A last year and winning the title there, I think that was part of the catalyst for the changes you just mentioned with the multiplier. They're definitely one of them. So, no, this obviously is going to be a really interesting game. Byron's dominated. I only went back through 2016 trying to find results of this series. Byron's won every year. They didn't play 2016 and 2017 because the BNC was at 11 teams at that point immediately after the teams that went to form the Kishwaukee River Conference left. So that they have had 11, they've had 9, but so they didn't play those 2 years. And Byron's won every year since 2018.
Yeah, I think
they did not play in the short
term. And I'm going off memory, or maybe I did type it in my notes. I did. Dixon's last win over Byron came in 2014. So
there you go.
It's been 11 years. Maybe
I should have just read one more sentence in the notes. I didn't realize you added. Nice ad.
I wasn't sure if I did, quite honestly. So, but yeah, Dixon's 8th in Class 4A, Byron's 1st in Class 3A. This is obviously, come on, this is a marquee matchup, the marquee matchup for the conference, and this is a big one. We have other ones that are regional rivalries, week 1, week 2. You don't have a lot of conference showdowns like this in week, this early. Although I believe, I'm going off memory. I hope I'm right, but I think Wilmington Coal City might be a little earlier in the season this year also, or maybe it's week 9. I know they moved it.
Yeah. Well,
forget I mentioned that.
But it's
this
still
one should be great. This one obviously should be a great matchup.
Yeah. No, and Dixon, obviously, I still think Byron comes out on top, but man, you kind of just wanted to see just to change it up a little bit. See Dixon kind of break through them. I mean, they've had the teams to do it. Obviously, last year's game was last year's game. Byron, I know they're still got Caden Considine for what seems like his 6-year senior season, but he might have had COVID eligibility. I'm not sure. Took a red shirt. But it seems like he's been there forever because he's been running over people since he's a freshman. So I think he's Iowa bound, if I'm remembering correctly. So that's an interesting BNC matchup. Also, want to keep it in the BNC for a second, just, because it's one of my schools we cover up here regular, and that's Genoa Kingston. Talked a little about them last week. Ended up losing to Oregon 27-20. Now they have Stillman Valley this week. Both games are at home. And you talk about big week 2 matchups, of conference champs and everything. Well, I pointed it out last week that there were 3 teams that ended up going 5-4 in the regular season in the BNC, 5-5 overall, and GK plays both of them in the first 2 weeks, and they are the third. So they lost to Oregon. That makes this game against Stillman Valley really important. Obviously, whichever one of these teams loses these games, Stillman Valley lost to Marengo last week handily. Marengo's a little bigger, and also one of those 5-4, 5-5 type teams. But whichever team loses this game this week is going to be 0-2 and in really bad shape. And in Genoa Kingston's instance, that's a couple of teams that you could have / should have beaten, one of which you did beat last year, and to let those get away, it's going to be a rough start if they're 0-2. Not that 1-1's a cakewalk, but it's given the way the schedule fell, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, and that's true for teams all over. I mean, 0-2, certainly you can come back from it. The schedule is what the schedule is, and a lot of teams, as we talked about, challenge themselves early in the season with those non-conference. But that being said, it's not a position anyone wants to be in. The other thing, it's not all just about getting in the playoffs. It's the draw you end up with. We talked about, who you end up with is, some second-round matchups that are just brutal, killer, and they're out there. Those teams are out there lurking. They might be in a different class this year for the non-boundaried school, but they're out there lurking. So, even starting 0-2 and, hey, we finished 7-2. Awesome. You're in the playoffs. You have a road game. Go play an undefeated team, 250 miles from your stadium,
Yeah, especially at 3A or whatever.
Yes. And also I did look it up. Coal City Wilmington was moved to week 9. So the Illinois Central 8, they got their stuff together.
Oh, they figured that out.
About where it should be. I believe it was a late season game last year, but I don't think it was week 9.
So yeah, no, it's in GK, if I'm remembering correctly, has struggled against Stillman the last couple of years. So this is, like I said, they've got to circle up the wagons, and this is going to be a big one for that one. So I think we're good with 11-man schools, but I wanted to dip into 8-man for a minute with a couple of things. I know there's one up my way and one down your way / out west.
Yes, one down my way. It would be a Polo, a state Illinois 8-man football association state semifinalist last year. They're visiting Flanagan Cornell Woodland. The game is right down the street from my house at Woodland High School, the Woodshed. That's one of those games. Polo's kind of a proven. They've won 2 8-man championships already. How many have there been? 7, 8? They've won 2 of them. They're state semifinalists last year. They are that elite crop. FCW, strong program. They've been in the playoffs more often than not since 8-man, including the past 2 seasons. But they want to join that elite crop. So you can't do it if you can't beat the teams that are at the top. So this is a big one for them. FCW does have a couple of dangerous, people who can run the ball. Leland Durbin ran for 1,000 yards last year. Logan Ruddy is just a physical, tough guy, heck of a basketball player, just one of those kids who's an athlete, everything he does. FCW 1-0 after taking a forfeit win last week. That being said, I mean, you got to beat them to join them. And, I think Polo's a powerhouse, and you got to like their chances.
Yeah, like you said, the presentation of that game is interesting with, FCW getting the chance to, they want to make a statement this year. Hey, week 2, go ahead, make your statements. A lot better to have statement games in week 2 than, 2 of the best teams in the state battling it out. I'm going to go ahead and say that.
And you have another 8-man game that looks pretty interesting. I know you mentioned Hiawatha and Westminster.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up Hiawatha because they opened with a win over Galva. I know Galva's kind of struggled the last couple of years or for a while, I think, and, both in 1A and then dropping down in the 8-man. But, Hiawatha went out there, down there, whichever, and picked up the win. They're playing the Harvest Christian Westminster Christian Co-op this year. Say that even twice, I dare you. Westminster hasn't played a game since 2019. They didn't play last week. They only have about 12 players on their roster, apparently, according to Hiawatha.
That was FCW's forfeit.
Well, then see, there you go. So they had to forfeit that one. Apparently, they didn't have enough kids to practice during the week, so they didn't have enough to play in the game. So again, with just 12, it's with a co-op at the 2 private schools there in Elgin. But it seems like, kind of a winnable type game for Hiawatha, having it at home. Then right now, as Hiawatha's schedule stands, they got 2 forfeits coming up. They haven't been able to find a replacement for either Schlarman or Rockford Christian, who had a drop right before the season started. So, I mean, that's 4 wins for Hiawatha, if they, can pull this one out. So not just, you talk about not just making the playoffs, but moving up. That's kind of been the issue with Hiawatha the last couple of years is, they'll win 4 or 5 games, sneak into the 8-man playoffs, and then lose the Polo or lose the, whatever team's going on to reach the finals or the semifinals. So this, year is set up for Hiawatha to have kind of a better seed if they can get this win here.
And you mentioned 12 kids on the roster or 12 kids in practice. Have you ever covered a game like that? I think at FCW, I think might even been a game at Woodland. It might have been Schlarman. It was 8-man a couple years ago, but there was a team that had 2 kids on the bench, and that's playing 8-man. So they had 2 kids on the bench standing over there, and one of them got hurt and was laying on a trainer's table. So they had 1 kid, 1 sub. It was a thing to see, man. I mean, but you know what? It shows a love for high school football. We celebrate the great teams, and we should. But there are kids that go out there every week knowing they're probably going to get running clocked, but they go to practice every day. They do, and it's just it's the love of high school football. Here that those kids have, that these coaches have. It's awesome to see that they're willing to suit up, even though it's an 8-man, not 11-man team with 12 kids, and go out there and say, man, it probably isn't going to go well, but I get to play football tonight. I think that's just awesome.
No, it really is the best, and it's the part of this that like you said, it's just fun and great to see, and why we love this sport, and not just for Dixon Byron games, but for the other end too. It's just fun. That's why we're here, or it's why we work here, I guess we should say, because I think we're putting a big bow on this sucker, are we not?
Sounds good to me, Eddie. Good talk again. Where are you at Friday?
Where am I at? Oh, I'm at DeKalb, actually. Didn't really mention them. They're playing Phillips this week. kind of an interesting matchup there. Both teams last decade were playoff perennial. This decade they've kind of fallen on a little harder times, both of them. So it should be kind of interesting. For DeKalb, obviously, it's seeing if they can bounce back. We talked about it last week that after they lost to Sycamore, it sent them down a kind of bad path. And so we'll see what another tough Sycamore loss in a game they probably feel like they could have / should have won. See how they bounce back this year.
Sounds good. I'll be down in Eureka. Another game we didn't talk about, Prue St. Bede Academy visiting Eureka. St. Bede looks like has a decent chance at a win against a Eureka program that has been really strong, but maybe might be down a little bit, but I'll find that out for myself Friday night.
So obviously all coverage, preview, and from Friday available at FridayNightDrive.com. Also check out our YouTube channel. I'm sure the big boys have been teasing that a ton, but you should check out our YouTube channel. Every reporter in this company has been doing a great job last week of getting videos up there. Obviously the live show Friday night with Rodewald and Seuss is kind of incredible, and I'm not just saying that because they put my video on there sometimes. It's a great show, and you should probably watch it. It starts at like 9:30 on Friday night.
I think that's right.
So on our YouTube channel, you can't miss it. So thank you all for listening this week. He was JT Pedelty. I'm Eddie Carifio. Thanks, guys.